All right, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast today. I'm your host, Don Purdom, and I have with me today the most lovely and talented, amazing wife on planet Earth, Mrs. Nicole Purdom. Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, honey.
How are you, baby?
Wow. I think I'm just stunned by that introduction.
Well,
but thank you.
You should be used to that by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, folks, on Tuesday's podcast, we talked about how to restore a marriage headed for divorce. And towards the end of the podcast, I mentioned I was going to bring Nicole on with me today, and you're going to hear more often from Nicole as we go along in this podcast series, especially when we get into discussions about marriage and a lot of struggles that couples have out there. And honey, why don't you take a minute and just kind of share a little background about, how we met and how you fell in love with me instantly?
Oh, gosh. Well, we met at church when I was 17, and I guess you would have been 20 years old. And let's just say, as you well know, I was not interested in you when I met you. I wanted nothing to do with you.
I don't believe that. Mm-mm-mm.
Well, you can tell yourself what you want, but the truth is the truth. We were friends first for about 5 months. And I think somewhere along the way, I sensed it might be something more, but I was in total denial of it. It certainly wasn't at first. But somewhere in that 5-month period, I think I started to have some feelings for you and just kind of pushed them aside. But that 5 months, we really got to know each other. We talked for hours on the phone, shared our life goals, what our interests were, and I wouldn't change that for the world. And that really was the foundation, I feel like, that we used for communication and then building that friendship, which transitioned into love and a whole different type of relationship.
Yeah, and that's true for us. I think so many people start their relationships and it's physical.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't with us.
And it wasn't with us. Like you said, there was that 5 or 6 months where you just wanted to be my friend. Obviously, I wanted much more than that, almost right out of the gate. But it was good that you did that because it really gave us that time to cement our relationship. And like you said, that foundation of our relationship, because we really got on the same page in terms of who we are as people and as individuals, and what would that look like together as a couple, and what would be that foundation that would sustain us. Here we are. It'll be 31 years in July. So we've been married 30 and a half years. We've known each other for almost 33?
In September.
Okay,
yeah.
So 32?
Yeah.
So we've known each other over 32 years now, and it's been quite a journey.
It absolutely has.
It is. Every marriage has its ups and downs and has its challenges, but of all the things that we've gone through, it seems to me, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, it seems to me that those things brought us closer together. It didn't draw us further apart.
It absolutely did, because I think the blessing in the fact that we were married so young is we kind of grew up together and we've lived life together. And I've always viewed it as, from the day we got married, we're a team. Everything we experienced together. So this journey that God's had us on for 30 plus years, we go through it together and we face it. And in viewing it through that lens, it has made our marriage stronger. It has brought us closer together. We've weathered the storms. We've relished and rejoiced in the good times. And if you can view your marriage through that lens, it's automatically going to bring you closer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the amazing part about it for me has been to watch you grow as a wife and a mom, and to see the amazing person that you've been. And one of the foundations of our marriages, I know, is we always try to affirm each other. We don't tear each other down. We don't hammer each other when we're fighting even. We've learned how to fight fairly.
Right. Yeah, I think in the beginning it wasn't necessarily that case, but we've definitely learned over the years. And if we've made mistakes along the way, we've learned from those mistakes as well.
Yeah. So let's kind of jump into the early part of our marriage and some of the initial challenges that we had there, because it laid the foundation really for what the rest of our marriage was going to become. And I love to tease Nicole all the time because I was still in the Navy when we got married.
Yeah.
And so she got to be a Navy wife. Woohoo!
For 1 month.
For 1 month. She had the card and everything.
Yeah, it was official.
She was official. And so, but when I got out of the Navy, one of the things that we did, because I grew up in Oklahoma, and I know you kind of have a fun story about that too, when you saw the license plate the first time.
Yeah, because you were stationed in Connecticut, where I'm from. And I don't think I had ever seen an Oklahoma license plate before that. And man, we met at church. But before I even met you, it was a Sunday morning. My mom and I had to be there early because my dad had choir practice. And we were just sitting out in the parking lot, kind of waiting till choir practice was over and before the service began. And we saw you come rolling in your little Ford Escort. And you got out and walked in. And my mom looked at the license plate and said, "Oh, Oklahoma." And I just remember saying in my young foolishness, "Oklahoma, where is that?" Yeah, I had no point of reference being a good old Connecticut Yankee.
Yeah, good New England girl.
That's right.
Good New England girl. So when I got out of the Navy, like I said, we've been married for a year. We actually lived with your mom and dad for the first couple of years of our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as that was a blessing, it also had its challenges. Living with your parents, not because we didn't love your parents, just the natural order of things. You know, you have
Right.
two adults from different generations living under the same roof, and that brings its own set of challenges. But there was one challenge in particular that stirred our first real fights, and we kind of had to learn to navigate some waters together. I'm going to let you tell that story because I think you tell it so much better
Well,
than I
it
do.
has to do with our backgrounds. I grew up in a family where football on Sundays was kind of a casual thing. We would go to church, we'd come home, my dad would put football on. And when I was little, I would get up on the couch with him and take a nap. So I kind of grew up with the notion that football on Sundays was nap time. Well, then I meet you. You want to talk about polar opposites in that regard. I would say you come from a family that is very passionate about your football, especially college football, being from Oklahoma.
Yep. They love their Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah. So I quickly learned that football to you on Sunday afternoons after church is like we get home and we put on football and we watch it all afternoon and we dedicate the rest of our day to the football games and go crazy and yell at the TV and yell at the refs like they can actually hear you. And this was just a foreign concept to me. It was like, what is this? And I felt like in those beginning years, you know, they have those pillows they used to have. I don't know if they still do. They say like, you know, "We interrupt this marriage for," and I used to joke and say to you, "I'm going to buy one that says we interrupt this marriage for football," because I felt like if I wanted to do something on a Sunday afternoon with you, well, no, I couldn't schedule anything or plan anything because it was time to put on football and dedicate our afternoon and evening to that. So it was really frustrating in the beginning. I got really frustrated with feeling like that wasn't me time. So I had to learn to kind of compromise and learn what to argue over and what was worth arguing over and not. And I think through some heated discussions in the beginning, and you just telling me, "Look, this is my one thing. This is my outlet."
Yeah.
And me having to give you grace and realize, okay, yeah, it's for a few months out of the year. And is it really worth arguing over or causing an issue where there really shouldn't be one? So.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny to sit back and reflect on it 30 years ago, but
Right.
but I remember having that conversation with you and saying something along the lines of, now hold on a second. I have just one thing and only one thing. And so on Sunday afternoons, I like to watch football. That's it. I don't go out during the week. I don't go anywhere on Sundays. We're together all the time. I don't go out with the guys. I don't go to bars. I don't do anything. And the rest of the year, I don't do anything. It's just my one thing. Can I have my one thing for one Sunday for 3 months out of the year? Would that be okay if I have my one thing? And it was so funny because I remember your face when you looked and goes, well, when you put it like that.
Yeah. And that goes back to having that open line of communication, to be able to share how I was feeling, to have that sense of trust and feeling comfortable enough to say, hey, this is what's bothering me. I'm frustrated. And then hearing your side of things and then really taking that into account and, coming to the conclusion that, oh, really, this is not too much to ask. I'm being kind of ridiculous here. So I had to kind of reevaluate my expectations of you. And obviously I decided that, okay, you have your football, whatever. I'll go find something else to do for, however many hours it is. And we'll have plenty of other time together.
We later in life, we ran into all kinds of other interesting obstacles. A lot of them were always around finances, quite frankly. And that's probably true of a lot of couples. Career and finance and what do we want to be when we grow up kind of thing. We're still fumbling through that one a little bit. What do we want to be when we grow up? No, I'm just kidding, folks. We're not doing that. Not really. But here we are 30 years later. And again, I look back on it and I see these different pivotal moments in our lives when getting out of the military and then going to Bible college. And moving here on faith. Our son at that time, this was in January 2nd of 97.
Yeah.
That we moved from Connecticut to here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
And even that was an experience in itself, just getting here from Connecticut.
Yeah. We won't even get into all of that nightmare.
That's a story for another day.
Yeah, story for another day. But we had the whole, we're not sure how we're going to do this. We kind of tipped our toe into the water of faith, so to speak.
Right.
And in that journey, we realized that no matter what happened to us, God had us.
Absolutely.
He had us. We didn't have a guarantee of a job, but we had an apartment to pay for. We had a 1.5-year-old that we had to take care of. And somehow, some way, it worked out. I found a job, I started school, we got an internship, and then we just ran into other journeys and other things. And part of that was church related and others of it were relationship driven. But, one of the things that really, again, helped bring us together was being involved in other people's lives. Having friends and mentors and mentorees. And we kind of had both sides of that. And for us, it was our best friends. Well, they're our best friends now. They weren't necessarily then, but they became so really quickly. Mm-hmm. And Dave and Laura, who on our pages about marriage transformation and the coaching program that you and I have created, they have testimonial on there.
Right.
And that testimonial came from that period of time, more than 25 years ago. Right. And they were going through a difficult time. They were newly married and already having problems. And by God's grace, they showed up at our church and in our small group. And we had known her mom and dad, mm-hmm. and they kind of helped facilitate that introduction. And they asked us to help them.
Right. Just to be kind of a mentor to them and a model for them. Because at that point, we had been married for 5 years.
Boy, a whole whopping 5 years.
I know.
I look back on it and think, what did we know?
Had a child. Yeah, we thought we were something back then, huh? But it was such an amazing time. God really used that. And as much as I'd like to think that we were a blessing to them, they were a huge blessing to us too. And
mm-hmm.
the bond that we developed in our friendship, I mean, now they're more than friends. They're family, It was amazing.
Yeah, it sure was. And I look back on that time and thinking about the benefit or the power of just being direct. I mean, we kind of got real with each other. And this is really where we started to learn about transparency, because we watched what they were going through. And we always kind of said to ourselves, I'm so thankful that I have you.
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't go through some of the challenges that they went through. And they didn't go through challenges because they didn't love each other. I think there was some youthful
Well, and
things going on there.
figuring out who each other was and really getting to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
What, their quirks, what makes them truly tick, what sets them off in some instances. And I think that's true of a lot of couples.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of couples kind of get stuck in that phase. They never really grow past that and learn how to communicate in such a way that they can receive feedback and they can give feedback and it not be in the form of an attack.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of like you mentioned earlier, learning how to communicate in such a way that you're not putting the other person on the defensive and striking out at them. Because as I said, you are a team. You are in this marriage together. And it should not be, oh, my spouse versus me. No. If you're looking at it that way, you're looking at it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And every team has to know their moving parts and what the individual strength is and what the individual's weakness is and your partners, and be able to match those things up. Because I've learned almost universally with the couples that we've worked with over the years and just our own experience with each other, that your weaknesses complement my strengths and vice versa.
Absolutely. And I think it's amazing how God works it out where when you're having a weak moment, that I'm the strong one and I can encourage you. And when I'm having a weak moment, you're the strong one to encourage me. We have to lift each other up. When we see that our spouse is hurting or struggling with something, we have to step up to the plate, if you will, and be that encouragement to them. That's part of that intimacy.
Mm-hmm. And the intimacy really does come later. I mean, it wasn't like we can't say we had the same intimacy at 5, 10, 15, or 20 years even than we have today.
Yeah, it changes.
I
think it gets deeper if you're growing closer together as those years go by.
Yeah, and of course, we're not talking about physical intimacy. I mean, it is a part of it, but it is not the part of it, because having been married 30 years, I mean, just to get real about this, sex today is different than it was when we were young, when we were first married,
Right.
When we were still kind of discovering each other, for lack of a better expression.
Yeah, things change.
Yeah, things change. And it changes for the better in different ways. And so I feel more emotionally intimate with you. I feel more intellectually emotional with you. I connect with you. I understand you in ways I didn't understand you 30 years ago, because we've had that time. And so when we over time, really thought about this, we came up with a plan. When I was in the military, this is something that I've shared often, and you were part of seeing that from a distance. You didn't get to see that up close and personal, obviously.
Right.
But I was a chaplain in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. And of course, the Guard is more utilized for military operations, I think, than the active military, the active Army, or even the Army Reserves. And I can remember leading up to 9/11, they were talking with the chaplains about, we have to think about ministry differently. We have to think about how we help people differently, especially the families, because we've got a soldier who's going to go to Afghanistan, and we're going to go to Iraq a little later. Of course, the dogs want to bark when we're talking. But they're going to come back a different person. And what does that mean for the spouse at home who doesn't know that? And so I learned all of these ideas and skills, and I didn't even always know that I was learning this stuff until later, quite frankly. But out of all of those experiences and going through entrepreneurship, and, we had some real ups and downs. I mean, we had times where money was flowing and it was good, and we had other times when we were just flat broke and didn't know how we were going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to say to you, okay, this is a roller coaster ride we're on. Strap in and hold on.
Yeah. And of course, none of the businesses that I own really had an opportunity to mature into some stability, because I wasn't meant to do that. And I knew I wasn't meant to do that. And I was kind of chasing things, and you would try to tell me, and I didn't always listen.
And I tried to be that voice of wisdom, but there's a level of, and I'll just keep repeating this, grace. You got to give your spouse grace sometimes to maybe put it out there, share your concerns, and then let them do what they feel is right, even if it's not, even if you can see sometimes that it may not be the right thing, and just pray. And there's many times where I had to do that.
Yeah, and the process that we learn, that we develop, the stages of a relationship goes from transparency to confidence, and from confidence to trust, and from trust to intimacy. And obviously intimacy is the ultimate of those 4 levels, but you don't just jump from 1 to 4 overnight. They take time. That transparency takes a lot of time of just learning each other, telling the truth to one another. And when you lie, I talked about in our ebook about that time that I lied to you and your parents because I was ashamed of myself. I was embarrassed of my past. When we first met, I struggled with my own identity, and I had lied to Nicole and her family and made up this story that my father was an Air Force general because I wanted to feel important. I wanted to look good. I wanted to look good to them.
Well, and the funny part about that was I could have cared less who your father was. It meant nothing to me. It was all about you.
It was all about me and my insecurities. But I realized at some point that I had to tell the truth. I'd started to get in a little too deep into the lie. And when I came clean and explained why I lied, and I sat Nicole and her parents down, and I just fessed everything up and asked them for their forgiveness, I had experienced something I'd never experienced in my life before, and that was true forgiveness. And I learned that I could be transparent with Nicole. I could be the real me with her, and I didn't have to be afraid of being vulnerable with her. And I think that's the key here, is that we all have to learn how to be transparent with our spouse. And it just starts with being truthful.
Absolutely.
What are you feeling? Why are you feeling it? Why do I feel afraid to share the finances? Here's where we're at. Why am I afraid to share that? Is there something in the recesses of the back of my mind or in my subconscious that says, well, if my wife thinks I'm a failure, she's going to leave me, or if my husband thinks that this about me, that he's not going to love me anymore? We tell ourselves stories.
Yeah, and when we do that, that's not fair to your spouse. You're assuming how they're going to respond to whatever you're struggling with. And that's not fair to them. You're not giving them an opportunity to share how they're feeling and to respond to whatever you're struggling with and to minister to you in some way and be there and be an encouragement to you. You like cut that off at the knees when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the more truthful you are with yourself and your spouse, it kind of leads into that next stage. And that's confidence. The more you do something positive over and over again, the more confidence in that relationship that you establish. And I find that this is where most couples fall apart, because if they can't be transparent with one another, then they can't grow the confidence in their spouse to know who their spouse is, or that they can, or, confidence can be negative too. I've got the confidence to know that if I do or say this, they're going to respond negatively like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pushing buttons.
They're either going to push a button, they're going to say something hurtful, they're going to threaten to leave again, something's going to happen, or even worse yet, they just shut down, don't say anything. And in some of these Facebook groups I'm in, what I'm seeing, and it's overwhelmingly the ladies in the groups that are a little bit more talkative and transparent about their experiences. But I hear this all the time, that my husband doesn't talk to me. He doesn't communicate with me. He doesn't tell me what he's feeling or what he's thinking. I'm isolated, kind of out on an island. And I think my experience, and Nicole, I'll have you jump in here in just a second, but my experience is that ladies, many times you're not asking your husband to tell you how he feels. You want your husband to validate something about you when he can't give that to you in those moments.
Well, I think it's in the moments of vulnerability or where you're not sure what's going to happen. I know for me, it was, I wanted that reassurance that everything was going to be okay. That sense of security. I think as wives, we need that. And if our husband's not talking to us and not sharing what's going on with him, we start to lose that sense of security.
Which then causes what? I mean, what do you experience as the typical reaction, or not typical, but a normal reaction that most women give to their husbands when their husbands start to shut down?
Well, they start asking him why, and then the husband feels like, oh, you're badgering me, leave me alone, quit pressuring me, you're just adding more stress. And maybe it reaches a point where the woman is like constantly asking them, or in the husband's mind, nagging them, if you will.
Yeah.
Because they just want that communication. They want answers, and
They want reassurance.
They want reassurance and
Yeah.
feeling like, I want to know everything's going to be okay. I want to know that we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And if the woman feels like they're the only one that's talking and trying to communicate and it's not being reciprocated, then we have problems.
Yeah. And guys, I want to speak to men for just a second, because, we've heard the old saying that, forgive me if I get this upside down or I get this backwards or wrong, right? But men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Is that the right way? Yeah, that's the right way. Okay. Right. Men think differently than women, and they experience things many times different than women. It doesn't mean that we're not insecure. It doesn't mean that we don't have all the answers. But, I think that a lot of times, guys, if you're not, you got to be transparent with your wife. She's a big girl. She can handle it. She may break down and you may feel like she's not handling it well, but you're not being fair to her by not giving her a chance.
Exactly.
And not the reassurance that she wants is the hug and the shoulder to cry on, maybe. That's my experience with kind of the moments that we had. You didn't need me to tell you how everything was going to be all right. You just needed to know that we were in it together.
Exactly. Yeah. What I was just thinking when you were mentioning that is, what I needed was, okay, this is where we're at. The reality of this is where things are, but we're going to get through it together. Going back to that team mentality. We are in this together. It's not, I'm in this, you're over here, or, you're over here and I'm doing this off by myself. That's never going to work.
No. And guys, you have to be transparent with your wife. Because what will happen is if you're transparent with her and she knows what's going on and she knows how you're feeling. Now, I don't mean you have to be all weepy and crying. You have to be who you are as a person. Don't be somebody that you're not. But that's not an excuse to withhold from your wife. And what I've found is that where the men go, the women usually follow. And what I mean by that is that when you get real with her, and you embrace her and you assure her that you don't know the future or how this is going to turn out, but you're going to go through this together and you're going to be better for it. If you can assure her of that, it makes all the difference in the world.
Oh, and I think it'll help strengthen your relationship too. That like I said, that lens of looking through, we go through this together. Everything that we do is together. We face the good times, the bad times together.
Yep.
Not alone on an island, separate from each other.
Yeah. So whatever problems you may find yourself in right now, it's not without hope. But the complexity of the problem may determine the timeline that you're actually able to get back on the same page and feel good with one another. Because you have to reestablish that whole process of being transparent, of confidence. And then that third piece of it's trust, because once you have someone's confidence, then you begin to build trust. But trust even has layers, because it takes experience and confidence and time to establish that deep level of trust that I can predict where you're going to go. I can predict and understand based on our past experiences how you're going to respond to a situation or a circumstance, which instead of making me afraid as a husband and pulling back, it ought to encourage me to be able to engage you more, because, okay, if I can understand how she's going to look at this, then I know how I need to communicate to her to give Nicole the feedback that she needs. Like right now, we're both looking at each other like, really, the little dog's going to bark right now. but that's another
She
story.
wants her say too.
She wants her say too. Yeah. She's got something to say about Barkley, her little man love.
Yeah, that's it.
Her little four-legged man love. He's not being very transparent with her right now.
We'll have to work on.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that. But with all of that said, that building trust is vital to the marriage relationship, because if you don't have it and you can't develop it, then it's really hard. And if you've had a certain kind of challenge in your marriage, maybe that challenge dealt with just not a lack of truthfulness over and over, or shutting down, or maybe it's the ultimate betrayal. Maybe there was infidelity, but you still love that person. You still want the marriage, and you recognize that maybe I had a part to play in this too, because it always takes two. I can guarantee of every relationship we've ever seen, it always took two for the marriage to get where it was. Now, with that said, it might have been the one partner was only 10% of it and the other one was 90% off the deep end, but there was still 10% or 5%. And what did I contribute to that I could have done better? And those are the things that we have to learn when we go through those experiences. So how do we develop that kind of trust with one another? And that out of that trust comes that bond. And that's when intimacy begins to develop, because Nicole knows things about me that nobody else knows. I know things about Nicole that nobody else knows, and no one ever will, including our children. It's between us.
Right. And the thing is, we've been married so long that I can just look at you and know what you're thinking. I can size up a situation, and all I have to do is, take a moment and be like, oh, I know how Don's going to respond to this one, or I know what's in his head. I know what he's thinking right at this very minute. And sometimes I don't even have to look at you. I just know you that well.
Yeah. And it's not that anybody else would even pick it up.
Right.
In a lot of instances, some people would never even know, but you do.
Because we had that time.
Just ignore them. We'll just keep going. They're going to do it. There's somebody outside. They bark. Anyway.
I was going to say, because we've had that time to get to know each other, to build that communication and, the intimacy, the trust. And I feel like I know you so well now that I know what you're thinking. I know how you're going to respond to things. And there's some moments, because I know what you're thinking and how you're going to respond, I will just, maybe we're in public and I just kind of put my hand on your lap or my hand on your shoulder to be like, now's not the time.
Well, and to be fair, you have learned new things about me in the last couple of months, though, even after 30 years.
Oh, yeah. You're never done learning.
I've gone through some experiences where, as a veteran being involved in the VA system, we've had an opportunity that I've had some challenges over the last number of years with anxiety and high blood pressure, and had a few visits with the doctor because of those things, and really wanting to get to the bottom of, okay, what's really driving this? There's more to it than I just have high blood pressure. And some of that came out of our experiences over the years. I don't mean experiences pertaining to, my relationship or my marriage. I mean the things that happen externally to us, from business challenges to finances and stuff like that. And we're still learning about each other all the time.
I don't think you're ever done. If you are truly actively engaged in your spouse's life, you're always going to learn something new. It might be something very small, but, I know for me, I don't like to reveal all my secrets right away.
Why don't we end right there? That's a really good place to end today. So we'll be back again soon, and Nicole and I will be together to talk about marriage and practical ideas and tips and things that we have seen and experienced in our time coaching other couples and just being friends with couples and whatnot, or observing people in public. It's amazing what you can glean about a marriage just observing someone in public you don't even know.
Fascinating. You got to love people watching.
You got to love people watching. So with all that said, folks, stay tuned. Every Tuesdays and Thursdays, this podcast goes up, and I hope that you'll tune in, because we'll be talking, or at least I will be talking about all kinds of different things related to theology or church life or a Bible scripture, such a small Bible study, or it could be a contemporary event happening in the culture, but how does that impact us as Christians and how should we look at it? So anyway, thanks everybody for joining in today. I'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. And so for now, God bless you.